Hey, welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast and episode number 8 of our weekly series featuring Scott Battas from Mascoutah High School and his program on how you can create a great student-athlete leadership program at your school. We're going to be right back with Scott, but as always, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors who make this show possible. So stay with us. Don't hit that fast forward button. It's only going to take 3 minutes. Please listen to our sponsor shout outs. We want to say thanks to Hometown for their support of this podcast. You know, Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges, but they also have fee-free fundraising through School Funder, athletic website construction, and a whole lot more. Whether you're an athletic director, a head coach, even a principal, Hometown's going to show you how to save time. They're going to show you how to raise more money, and they're going to show you how to bring your entire community together. You'll find it all at hometown.com. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. You've heard me say probably the best purchase I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to thank Huddle. You know, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an AD, we were a Huddle school, and our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents loved the tools that Huddle provided. Join the millions of users. Go to huddle.com. Turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. We'd like to thank Athletic Surveys. You know, at my school, we use surveys for just about everything, for our student athletes, for our coaches, even for our parents. And the information that came back on these surveys, incredibly valuable. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that truly lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. It's athleticsurveys.com. And make sure you tell all these sponsors you heard about it on the Educational AD Podcast. We'd also like to say thank you to Home Campus. Scheduling, rosters, results, facility management, athletic eligibility and clearance. Home Campus does all of these things and more, and does it better and does it faster than the other programs. Go to homecampus.com to get started. That's it, homecampus.com. We want to say thanks to Booster Hub, the #1 booster club software package. You know, if you help your boosters with volunteer signups, you know that volunteer changes are just around the corner. Well, with Booster Hub, nothing falls through the cracks. Everybody stays engaged and connected. Same is true with sponsorship fees and concession sales. Booster Hub does it all. Give your boosters the platform they need. Give them the platform they deserve. And that platform is Booster Hub. Go to boosterhub.com. We'd also like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Now, Wall of Fame has been helping schools bring their legacy to life for over a decade, but their new creation service, Beacon Creative, takes it to a whole new level. Their talented team of writers is going to come up with compelling narratives about your school's history, your coaches, your kids, that you can then turn into your or post on your social media. You really got to see it to believe it. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and click on Content Services. You're going to be very glad you did. We want to say thanks to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, you've got a choice when it comes to choosing an institution for your master's degree, but if you want one that's top rated, has great feedback from their alumni, has a tremendously successful program that's respected at a national level, you need to choose Ohio University. Go to Ohio University and take a look at their online masters in athletic administration. Speaking of #1, your athletic department is doing great stuff, and Gipper allows you to share that using their platform. Gipper is used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college athletic programs. It is the #1 rated athletic marketing app. take a look at their thousands of professionally designed templates that you can then customize with your colors, your logos, your brands. Check out, create, share, and schedule all your social media on one simple platform, and that platform is Gipper. Go to Gipper.com to get started, and as always, make sure you mention the Educational AD Podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD and our weekly series featuring Scott Battas, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, also the Director of Athletics at Mascoutah High School. This is episode number 8 of a series that Scott's been presenting for us on how you can create a outstanding student-athlete leadership program at your school. Scott's recognized as a leader in this area. He's very active at the state and the national level, and we're very fortunate to have him spending his summer months with us. Scott, it's episode number 8. What do you have for our listeners this week on the Educational AD Podcast?
Thanks again for having me, Jake, and I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite topics today. And I mentioned it a little bit at the end of last episode, but I think it's important when we're talking about culture, talking about leadership, to try to figure out where we stand as far as leadership goes. We've been, I've just I've been in education 20 plus years. Many of my colleagues have been at least that long, and many of them are just getting started in not only athletic leadership, but leadership in general. And what I have found is that when I was born in the late 70s, and as I grew up, I feel like I was on the very tip end of being raised and coached with what we refer to as the old school mentality. I think, going to high school in the 90s and being in college right in the turn there in the early 2000s and playing college sports, I feel like the old school mentality, the same socks, the same language, the same way of leadership, the same way of discipline, the one size fits all approach, this is how we're going to do things, was, for all intents and purposes, what worked. It's how people got results. It's how people were driven to become successful as coaches, as leaders across the board, and whatever it may be that you did as a profession. I think what's really important today is that we truly recognize the difference in how the old school mentality truly can be linked with what we would call our new school mentality and methods in coaching and leading coaches. I think it's imperative that we understand that a firm old school mentality will not alone make you successful this day and age. It's just too different. It's too drastically different. We're talking about the age of NIL. We're talking about the age of individualism. We're talking about the age of everyone having voices. And all of those things have a place. And I think it's important to understand that. When we start to shoot down the notion that people can't be themselves, that people can't wear what they want to wear, what people can't do the things they want to do, that is fine. But you will have immense trouble relating with kids in today's generation. And some of us cannot like that. Some of us can speak out against that. But the successful people are going to adapt to it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I'll tell you what still has a place in society, what still has a place in coaching. Old school work ethic. That's the old school part that still works. The hard hat mentality, to show up to work with your lunch pail, to not let people tell you you're working too hard, to not let people tell you you're working too long, to not let people tell you that paying extra attention to details and spending a little more time on doing something right is wrong. And I think we do live in a society sometimes where those who don't have that inside of them try to talk those of us that do down a notch, to try to work a little bit less, to spend a little bit more time away. And don't get me wrong, there's a place for time away. There's a place for mental breaks. There's a place for all of those things. But I think those of us that truly were brought up in that old school era understand what I'm talking about. There were very few excuses in the 90s. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have streamed music. If you didn't buy a CD, you didn't listen to music. And before that was if you didn't have a a cassette tape. You didn't listen to music. We're in the era now where everything's so readily available. Back in the day, you had to earn a conversation with a coach by calling them or meeting with them. You had to earn a conversation with a recruiter. You had to talk to them on the phone. You actually had to show up at their place. They had to show up at yours. There was no social media. There was no DMs. There was none of that. So that ethic of work still has a place. I still think it's important for coaches to communicate with their kids via words in person. I think we struggle with this. I'm going to text my coach and tell him I'm going to be late. It's easier to do that, and I think that old school methods might be fading away, but the newer methods and cultures are being able to adapt without giving away what made them who they are. I think that's important. You don't have to give away what made you successful. I attribute a lot of things to my parents. I attribute a lot of things to my coaches, my high school football coach in particular, my college football coach, both true old school guys. I played college football in 2000, 2001, 2002. We all had to wear the same tube socks out to practice. That doesn't even exist anymore, but we just did it. We just did it. And we embraced who we were. If you look at Northern Illinois football, they still have the mantra, the hard way. That was developed back in our old school era when everybody did things the same. But what I think you need to be super elite at as a leader in developing culture in your buildings is that you have to have those old school strategies blended with modern leadership strategies. And I think two things are vital in this modern day leadership strategy more than they ever have before. One is understanding that every single kid in your program is motivated differently. Back in the old school mentality, it was one form of motivation. A lot of times it was loud, language and those types of things that grabbed people's attention and we reacted. Okay. Now, a lot of kids don't respond well to that. So we can take our ball and go home and say, these kids just don't get it. They don't want to learn. Or you can adapt to what they expect in that way and try to reach them on an individual basis and coach them in the way they understand. Kids these days aren't as focused on people because they're so focused on the things they read, the things they text, the things they see. They don't have to rely as much on verbal prompts to do things. And so they're not used to that type of motivation. You need to find a way to reach kids. I think that's so important. Finding the way that every single kid can be motivated is the key to developing a great culture within your program today. The next most significant thing, in my opinion, is that relationship building has never been more important. In the era of transfer, NIL, and let's not fool ourselves, it's trickling right down here into high school. The coaches that sit at their desk and go, I'm not going to dabble in that environment, will long-term not be successful. You need to find a way to build special relationships with their kids, adapt to their needs. And in some cases, you truly need to adapt to their parents' needs too, because they're trying to find a place for their kid to go to school where they feel valued. They feel like they have a vital part in the team. It's your job to make their role feel important, regardless if they play 2 minutes or 60 minutes. It's your job to make their role feel important. And I think, how does this tie into leadership programs, culture, all those things? Because these are the things that we need to be addressing in those leadership meetings, in those leadership situations, in those examples that we're calling out to our kids of toughness and energy and attitude and all of those things that relate. We could say anything we want, but if you're going to hang your hat on the things like we do, the energy, attitude, and toughness, or whatever your mantra is, you've got to find a way that those three things relate to your kids today. Not the kids in the 90s, not the kids in the early 2000s, the kids of today. And I think that's so important. It's the baseline of your culture. It gives you something to hang your hat on. And ultimately, it gives you an opportunity to motivate every single kid and to build a relationship with them. Both those things, super important, can give you an absolute head up on the opponents, on your competition, and those people in your region if you're doing those things better than anyone else.
Boy, again, I'm just scrolling down notes like crazy, and you're absolutely right. I was somebody who went through that, what you would call old school. I went to high school in the first part of the 70s, went to college in the second part of the 70s, and that's how we were coached. And we didn't even think about it, right, wrong, good, or bad. It was just that's how you were. But I guess to your point, it's different now. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. and kids have they don't they still need sports for all the good reasons and good things that sports can do, but they don't need sports as much as we needed it back in my day, maybe even in your day, because there's so many other opportunities for them to get involved. Other sports, like it used to be, you had football, basketball, baseball, and then maybe track and wrestling thrown in there. I mean, now there's so many other sporting opportunities for kids, and there's opportunities outside of organized sports. And so smart coaches, like you said, they're going to recognize this and, maybe approach things a little bit differently. Just so spot on. And that was just one of a dozen different things that you mentioned on this episode.
Sure, yeah, and we're going to dive in a little bit more down the road to kind of the club culture and all those things that are tied into this, as we tend to, try to push ourselves away from the club environment and try to, put our foot in the ground as interscholastic sports programs. I mean, there's a real intertwine there that we have to figure out, how we benefit each other instead of, trying to be the one that survives. Because if there's not a place for both, only one's going to make it. And I'm fearful that if we don't do the right things and address it the right way, that we interscholastic sports could come up on the wrong end of the stick, and that would just be devastating, in my opinion, to the development of kids overall, and then not only athletics but just overall. So,
oh no, without a doubt, boy, I can't wait for that next episode. Until it comes out, one more week, listeners. If they want to connect with you, pick your brain a little bit more, what's the best way our listeners can connect with Scott Battas?
Yeah, email Battas, Battass at msd19.org. Glad to hear from you, and glad to certainly enter a conversation about any of these things.
Well, Scott, thanks again for sharing. I know this is summer vacation for you, but we do appreciate you sharing. Want to thank our listeners for tuning in, and just remind you, we do upload the Zoom recordings to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Scott's going to be back next week with another episode of how you can create a student-athlete leadership team at your school and kind of the why you would want to do this. But we'll see you next time. And thanks again for listening on the Educational AD Podcast. Hey, another great episode by Scott. Make sure you reach out if you have any additional questions. Also, we want you to reach out to these sponsors. These are all great companies. You should have them working for you. I want to say thanks to Hometown, to Sideline Interactive, Athletic Surveys. I want to say thank you to Huddle. I want to say thank you to Ohio University and Gipper. I want to thank Booster Hub and Home Campus. I want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and Beacon Creative. And let's say thanks to K-12 Sports Tech. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.